Alrighty, so we are up to the second day of Mishlei 15:6. Okay, so we have Bayis Tzaddik Chosen Rav Uvitvuas Rasha Ne'akaras, and the translations we had yesterday are the house of a tzaddik has or is great wealth, but the produce of a Rasha is troubled, disturbed, sullied, corrupted, shame, whatever. Second translation is the house of a tzaddik is very strong. So the question is, does Chosen mean wealth or does it mean strong? And then when a Rasha arrives, okay, meaning when Tavua, meaning like lashon of bow, when he arrives, it is troubled, disturbed, sullied, or corrupted, or ashamed. And we had a translation C, which was with the produce of the Rasha, the house is ne'akaris. And then our questions were, isn't house masculine and ne'akaris is feminine? So I found pretty much all the grammatical rishonim, meforshim, all the grammatical meforshim address that. So I just quoted here, just a snippet from later on in Rabbeinu Yonah. Ne'akaris nimsa b'zeh Bayis lashon nekeva. So there are cases of Bayis lashon nekeva. V'chein kishacha el maves beisa. Okay, so there's a pasuk in Mishlei that says that she inclines. Shacha el maves beisa. Her house inclines towards death. Okay, so it's using shacha, I guess feminine, right? But then the Hooiel Moshe gives an explanation for why, which might not be relevant for ours. He says habayis, nekar habayis on our pasuk. Va'asahu kan lashon nekeva. I think I did this wrong. That's why I'm confused. Yeah. V'habayis v'asahu kan lashon nekeva v'chin lamala beis yurches v'gam kan hakavana al hatavua shi lashon nekeva. So he's saying that, oh, now I'm confused. I'm confused.
He's saying that the lashon nekah could go on either of them?
I think he is saying that, yeah. It's weird because he doesn't say or, right? But what I wanted to quote was on that pasuk Beis Yudches, he says for Shacha, lashon nekeva, musav l'shem bayis lashon zachar, Rak das hakosev al haisha atzma. So I don't know why he says hakosev. I don't know if he holds that like that part of Mishlei was not written by like actually written by Shlomo, but he's saying that the reason why in that pasuk it uses Bayis as feminine is to like match it with the woman that it's talking about. So I don't know if that helps us here. And then the miuchas lerav Ibn Ezra, the fake Ibn Ezra, who's Ramosha Kimchi, says uvitvuas Rasha nekares. Sorry, wait, is that the word? Yeah, Utvuas Rasha Ne'akaras. Yish Tavua Ne'akaras. He says the produce is Ne'akaras. Kinyan Zaro Chitim Bakotim Katsuru. So those are just other. So that was which of our translations was that? With the arrival. Oh, no, I'm looking at the wrong place. When the Rasha arrives, it. Oh, so he's saying the it is the no, that's not true. But the produce of the Rasha is ne'akaris. So I guess that's translation A. All right, so just want to follow up on that. So let's review the questions and the approaches. Questions: what is the scenario? What is the subject? 2, what's the relationship between the two halves? Are they opposites? If Tavua means produce, then that doesn't seem like an opposite. Also, if Chosen Rav, how are Chosen Rav and Tavua and ne'akaris opposites? Okay. 3, how does the Rasha's arrival mess up the house, especially if it's a strong house of a tzaddik? 4, what does Bayis mean in this context? Physical house, household, legacy, something else. 5, if Chosen means treasure, what does that mean? And how does Rav qualify the treasure? Also, is the pasuk saying that it has Chosen Rav or is Chosen Rav? 6, if Chosen means fortified, then in what sense is it fortified and against what? 7, what are the definitions of tzaddik and Rasha in this context? Is it generic or technical? 8, if Tavua means produce, is this literal, like crops, or is it a reference to any revenue or yield? 9, if Tavua means arrival, I spelled it wrong. If Tavua means arrival, how and from where? What is the Rasha actually doing besides just showing up? 10, what is it about the house and the produce of the tzaddik and the Rasha which makes them good or bad? 11, what does ne'akaris mean in this context according to either translation? 12, who is the intended audience? Is it the tzaddik or the people in the house? If it's for the tzaddik, is it pointing out a mistake he might make? And then what's the practical application, which I guess is part of the other question. Okay, so our approaches really quickly were. Is yours a development of yesterday?
No, it's a total.
Okay, fine. All right. So
idea.
Okay, so nistar idea. Okay, so we'll hold off even more than that. Hold on, just one second here. Okay, right. So the tzaddik accumulates his wealth honestly, and it's talking to the members of the household, right? That if you're in a tzaddik's household, you don't have to worry, but if you're in a Rasha's household, then you have to be aware that the wealth that he brought in might be tainted in some way, and you might not be able to use it in the way that you want, or in a way that like doesn't create other problems. Right. So that was Ariel's first approach. Then we had Ezra Fader, who said that it's talking basically about how to view the tzaddik and the Rasha, right? And their wealth and their success. So the Rasha might have a lot of visible wealth. And you might think that the Rasha is superior, but it is like tainted produce where it's not going to do him any good because of all the problems that come with it. And it doesn't really specify what the problems are. Whereas the tzaddik, whatever wealth he has, is going to be strong and have a permanence and is going to be secure because of the way he uses it or because of how people relate to him, etc. Oh, that's right. I knew the stolen art thing came in somewhere, right? So stolen art was our example of that, is if you steal certain things or if you have an illegal trade, then you're going to be limited in how you use your wealth. Even if you do money laundering, you're going to have to watch out for like the IRS and all those other stuff. And then Ezra also mentioned that the Rasha is going to use his wealth in a way that is going to cause it to not last or to be harmful, whereas the tzaddik will use it in the correct way. Okay, then we had Moshe Kabel's idea, which is that the house is something that lasts. It's like an institution, whereas the Rasha just gets yield. He's not really focused on the building of anything, and that's going to lead to short-sighted decisions. And then I had two approaches, apparently. One approach was, no matter how good of an operation the tzaddik sets up, the mere association with the Rasha can corrupt it in the perception of others. So don't associate with Rishayim, even in ways that you think the ends are going to justify the means, because that could corrupt, or that could ruin the whole thing. And then my approach for Metzudas David is that tzaddikim are good at building institutions that last, but no matter how well fortified they are against normal types of harm, the Rasha can always come and destroy it. And I gave you the example of skyscrapers are impressive things, but you cannot prevent people from like doing some sort of terrorist attack. So I developed this, and then my high school student of mine developed this. I was thinking that the nature of a system, I always forget which one's which. High entropy means a lot of order. No, opposite. Okay. Low entropy means a lot of order. Entropy is chaos. That's right. Yeah, okay, fine. So things that are low entropy are always easier to increase the entropy for, rather than the other way around, right? So I think first example I heard of this was, if you have a deck of cards that's all in order, it's easier to make that go from in order to out of order than from out of order into order through shuffling, right? So this is talking about an intrinsic weakness of any system. The better the system, the more, in a sense, subject it's going to be to corruption. Now, it doesn't mean in all senses, because obviously a good system is going to factor that in. But like, if you have a perfect machine, perfectly efficient machine, the perfect efficiency is a cause of it being more subject to being messed up if something goes wrong. Whereas something that's less efficient is going to be, could be, like, if it's a very loose system, so then it could like adapt in a different way. So that's it's in a sense, it is a unavoidable, I don't even want to call it a pitfall. It's an unavoidable vulnerability that the Bayis of a tzaddik has, is that the more efficient it is, then the more instantaneously the Rasha can mess it up. So then the question is, what is the practical application of that idea?
Can we challenge the idea?
You can challenge the idea, yeah.
Why? I mean, why wouldn't the tzaddik take that into consideration? Meaning,
so that's the practical idea.
Why are we using?
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, why are we using this perfect system to allow vulnerability? Maybe a perfect system. I mean, I don't know how you're using it, but like another perfect system could be taking that into consideration.
Okay, so that I think that is the chiddush of the pasuk. Yeah.
Can you give an example of the base Sadeh here, in like where this would happen?
Yeah. Let me think of an example. Actually, I want to develop the idea and then think of the example. Yeah.
Maybe in response to Ariel of why wouldn't the tzaddik take us into consideration necessarily? I think that there is good people have a certain naivete that everybody's a good person, and maybe like they'll see that people aren't great people, but they don't assume that that is going to then go and infect their own doing of good.
Is that a tzaddik though?
Yeah, I challenge it. I think there is a Rabbeinu Yonah that indicates that, and I think I'm running this from a long time ago. He talks, what was it?
Like Yitzchak.
Yitzchak, exactly. Yeah, it applies to Yitzchak, And I remember reading that and thinking that that's not my understanding of the Mishlei Tzaddik, that Davka, he will understand the Rasha, both because his seeking of tzedek in society forces him to think about the Rasha, and then if he's gone through his own development, he'll understand psychology better. So I don't think the real tzaddik will be blindsided by that. But I think your answer is the things. This is what my student said, is he said that therefore a tzaddik has to factor this in when he's setting up a system and either make it so that there are, what do you call them, fail safes? Is that the word I'm looking for? Where if something goes wrong, then there's like a backup system to to address it, or has to come up with additional protections, or has to come up with ways to easily rebuild when this is when this happens. Maybe just because I said that, I'm thinking this is a weird example. This is not going to be a good example for you, but like in Japan, you know how like Japanese homes, like in the classical, like stereotypical style, like all the walls are made of paper, right? So why is that? It's not for aesthetic purposes.
To see who's in the house.
No, you can't see through the paper. It's because Japan is on the, what do you call it, the Ring of Fire, I think. And Japan has always had all these earthquakes, and so if they build their houses in permanent ways, you could have like masterful architecture, but the earthquake could just knock it down. So they scaled back and built things in ways out of materials that can be easily rebuilt. Yeah, I've heard that. I don't know this. Like I heard this somewhere. I haven't checked it out. Yeah. So now let's come up with an example of where a tzaddik might make this mistake. Right. Oh, here's a good example. Right. Take and I'm saying this only because it's on in the news. I'm not advocating any particular position here. Okay, but presumably people who are in charge of voting over the years have created systems that protect against voter fraud. Okay, but what they and those systems are efficient. Okay, like from what I've heard prior to like, I don't know if you want to say prior to, what was that? No, I was going to say prior to, I'm not sure if it's the first Trump election, second Trump election, Bush Gore, I don't know at what point, but like America had a reputation of having very effective, reliable voting systems, whereas in other countries, like, no, so that lasted. But what that's, and it's a very effective system, but the thing is that type of system cannot stand up against either actual extreme voter fraud or the perception of extreme voter fraud. Like it is just not going to be able to stand up against that because of, again, I don't even know how the voting works. So, and that's the problem that people are grappling with now. And so the question is, like, what angle do you, this is out of my depth. My idiom thing is malfunctioning today. That like, is there something that the U.S. could have done theoretically? Let's say we knew that people would challenge the legitimacy of elections. Is there something that could have been done earlier in the way that the system was set up, or in terms of the way that it's presented, that could have like ensured against this or not? Like, but that's the type of thinking that this possibly is like trying to present. Or let's say another example. This is like a more of a common thing. Is there are many times where I have made for high school excellent lesson plans. Usually this occurs like in the early part of the school year, like the first week of school. I'll make very, very like using every minute, but I've had enough experience to know that schedules get messed up in the first week of school. So I make plan Bs and plan Cs for when like the bells aren't working and then we get 10 minutes like lopped off of the thing, So the mistake would be a naivete, not against like, it'd be naivete in terms of like, there's a certain like seduction of a good system or a good plan that like, you have to realize that a Russia could always totally destroy it. And you have to like factor that in. Yeah.
Now I got this stuff from your specific example.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like, is it possible that a tzaddik, everyone has limitations.
Yeah.
Right. And like in this specific example with like the voting, maybe like back in the day, they didn't even have to like even fathom that this was even a possibility.
Yeah.
Because like, and so they created a system that was great for their time, or
Yeah.
maybe for a few generations.
That's a good point, right?
So now the question becomes, now it seemed like a righteous or a good way of like, voting.
Yeah,
So now the question is like, is it his responsibility to even foresee like way in advance in the
Right.
future?
right.
Or do you say that, look, we're limited, we live in the times that we're living right now, or they have to think about potential downfall?
Right, that's a good question. Right. And what I would say is like this is you should always think about this as a possibility, but that does not mean
Right.
that it's worth your time and resources to actually like make plans for that.
But so which
Yeah.
leads into my second point. Maybe the mistake is that that I would say that you should think about it, and you should create some blueprint in a situation like that.
Mhm.
But maybe the issue is that, okay, maybe I don't have to do it because I'm gonna rely on, because I created this bias, this household, and I'm a tzaddik, and it's possible that someone will be a tzaddik as well and foresee it, and they'll deal with it.
Yeah, I mean that is part of the planning, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I think there is a thing called like a doomsday plan, right? Where like you do make a plan for if things go horribly wrong. Yeah. Also, I want to just point out that this mistake can happen the other way also, which is that going with my 9/11 example is no one fathomed that anyone would ever crash a commercial jet into a skyscraper. Okay, and then once that happened, then you had all these changes in the TSA. And the question is like, is that rational? No, right? I mean, meaning like for certain changes, yes. Like, like letting, I still remember as a kid when you could just go into an airport and just go up to the gate, like, you don't have a flight, but like, so that might be rational, but having everyone taking off their shoes or whatever, like there's like an overkill where you try to make plans to address like this evil Russia, but you can never stop a Russia. That's the thing. You can never stop. If someone really wants to do something new and horrible, you can't stop that, so the most you can do is like be aware that it's a possibility. And that's why, let's say like, my understanding of, let's say like in Israel, in Israeli airport security, and I guess Israeli security philosophy in general, they don't rely as much on fixed procedures, but it's on training you about how to think about criminals and their activity, so like training you in that fluidity, instead of like creating
they allow you to be in while.
Interesting. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go with Isaac's shot, which I assume is not derech nistar, and then we'll go to yours, then we'll go to the meforshim. Yeah, Isaac.
Yeah. So it's I'd say along the same lines as repeaters. Could you pull that up?
As what?
As it's along the same lines as Rafader's idea.
As Rafader's idea. Okay,
yeah. So it's about Russia has visible wealth and Saudi doesn't. But I'd say how the Russia's wealth doesn't. I'd say it's like how it's blighted.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to get caught up in, let's say, like, how much money is someone making? Even though, let's say he's making it legitimately, but he could be making tons of money, but if the way that he's using his money, relating to his money, is bad, which is going to be because he's Russia, he might be living paycheck to paycheck because he has so much lifestyle inflation that he makes himself dependent on having so much money in order to even just be able to function. Like, I was reading about someone who was complaining about how it's impossible to make ends meet on just the measly $800,000 annual bonus.
Bonus, yeah.
And like the guy who was talking to him was like hearing his expenses, and he's like, you're right, like because of how much he was spending. Whereas the tzaddik doesn't necessarily look like he's like he's maybe doing so well financially because he's not I'd say spending on signs of visible wealth, but he might be like just by making smart financial decisions, even with like a relatively low like income, you can generate lots of wealth that like you can use effectively. Like let's say like makes it so that you don't have to work anymore because you're you can just like live off of it.
Right. All right, that's good. That's good. I like that idea also. Okay. You wanted to say a derech nistar idea. All right. Yeah.
And maybe you could say you know, like your bias is your gut.
Okay.
Or your
That
mind.
has been used before.
Or your mind. I'm not sure.
Okay, I think that's harder.
Fine,
I think if anything,
go.
the Sadeh is going to be your mind. But yeah.
I'm still working it through, but like the gut. Yeah, maybe the wealth. The wealth is your mind.
Okay. I was gonna say I think the Sadeh is your mind, the wealth is the knowledge.
No,
you actually have the shot, or you're working
I
out.
do.
Yeah.
I do. But like
Yeah.
I have the I'm just still trying to piece it all.
Say what you want to say, and then we'll piece together.
I want to say that.
Don't lead with the weak part of your idea. Always a bad strategy.
I want to say that you know, like that your mind is like the you know the essence of your tzidkas, and like how you use it for your own personal for your growth.
Mhm.
And like the body you know, if you engage in like negative behaviors, it can affect your way of life in a harmful way.
Mhm.
And the great the great part of it is like if you use your body to benefit your mind, you know, that it'll only expound on your mind.
Okay, it sounds fruitful.
Like
yeah, sounds true. That's the type of idea that the Meiri would say for that. So I do want to see what he has to say. Let me show you first I want to do before Rabbeinu Yonah that new Rishon that was recently published. He had an interesting idea here. Rabbeinu Sheshes ben Yitzchak Gerondi.
Wait, what do you mean recently published?
Meaning like it was in manuscript form for hundreds of years, and then it was recently published.
Like, what's like
in a book?
Vatican, or was it?
I don't know where it was. I think it just wasn't. There's so many medieval manuscripts that just aren't published. They're just in Oxford or whatever. Yeah. So the first half is not going to be such a like exciting thing. Od Yosef Ladabra Mizeh. So one of the things he does in his commentary is he tries to explain the flow of the psukim. So he says, it's speaking more about this. So here, I don't know if this is a universal definition or he's just saying it here. He's saying tzaddik is someone who's perfected in midos. Bone beso lihios chosen rav. He builds his house to be chosen rav. Let's see how he defines that. Klomar yagia or yega kolul b'chol mida tova k'adam habone beso umarbe bo migdalim lios habayis hahu chazak. So he's saying strong. Chosen rav migdal gvoa. So he's fortifying his house. Through midos. Kizeh hashalim sam kol magmaso v'chefto liknos midos tovos. This perfected guy makes all of his objectives and his desires to acquire good midos. V'hechin tivo lios shalim, and he prepares his personality, his nature to be perfected. V'yagia b'zeh yagia rabba. I think yagia here is in terms of like acquisition, that he makes a lot of money. He gets a great acquisition. Okay, so that's a very long-winded way of saying he works on his midos and gets a lot of good midos. Okay, but this next part is what makes me interested. Rasha Klomar, kasher yavu ha'ish harasha, when the Rasha comes, this is a guy who lacks midos, v'yamod al tchunas oso hashalim, and I think this means like he assesses the character of this perfected guy. Yidme be'inav oso hayosher v'haseder ki'ilu hu davar achor mavubal. It will seem to him that uprightness and order, it's as if it is something that is corrupted and messed up. V'lo yidame lo shezeh ha'ish hashalim asher yagia lo yasher atmo b'midos asa kahogen. He will not imagine that this perfected guy who exerted himself to perfect his midos acted properly. He'll say that this guy messed himself up, right? Yeah.
Question on this?
Yeah.
Why do we care? Well, what the Rasha thinks.
Okay, good question. So let's first of all clarify the idea. So what's the main idea?
That Rasha will look at Tzaddik who's acting properly and think that he's acting in terrible ways.
Yeah, right. So I'll say Davka I'll start with the Rasha. The Rasha will look at the tzaddik's perfection of midos and view that as the opposite of what it is. Okay, instead of seeing it as refinement and perfection, he'll see it as corruption and being messed up, right? Yeah. So David's question is, who cares?
Well,
Yeah.
How's he reading the puzzle?
It's Bayis tzaddik chosen rav, the house of the tzaddik. I think he's using house metaphorically, right? I think he's using it as like, I think.
Seems like it.
Yeah, right. Meaning,
or like the way his
himself.
house runs.
Or himself, really. Like the. I'm trying to think if there's a other examples of this I can think of. I can't think of any right now. But like the tzaddik's house was, again, seems to be he's using it for his midos, his perfection of midos is built up, is highly developed, but when the Rasha comes to assess it, the house is corrupted. Yeah, meaning in his eyes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think who cares, because it's just saying like Rasha as if he's like totally evil, but I think all of us like partake of this.
Yeah.
And we could like look at certain, let's say, I think often like you could look at somebody who's like not partaking in anything which like I would expect that I would need for myself, or like doing like taking breaks or something. Or,
Yeah.
And you could look at that and say, oh, that's terrible. I don't know why he's doing that. But it's just like insofar as we can't do it, we look at it that way.
Yeah.
But really, we see this.
Okay. That's good. So first, just as a reminder, he's not talking about our definition of Rasha, which I don't think is entirely accurate to say that we like, our working definition of Rasha is someone who's like parasitic on the system that he's in, where he's just taking everything, all the resources for his own aggrandizement. Obviously, all of us have the capacity for that, but I don't think you would say that we all partake of that in various quantities, But this definition of Rasha, of someone who's imperfect in midos, it is a spectrum, and we all partake of that. So with that midos, which we all partake of to some extent, okay? So it's important to remember that when we see someone who has good midos, there's going to be a part of us that warps his perfection into the opposite of what it is in order to rationalize, I guess one's current state of midos. That's a very not articulate statement. Is that what you're saying, or you're saying something different?
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think that this can be important when teaching midos, right? Or when trying to like demonstrate good midos. I'd say pedagogically, which didn't we have a pasuk about Musar Av recently? It's that Chewbacca, yeah. Evil Yinas Musar Aviv B'Shomer Tochamas Yarim, right? Like the last pasuk, if you're banking on using or being a role model, you have to remember that there's a distorting factor in the audience, and not only might they not notice your perfection, but they might view your perfection as imperfection. I'm going to give an example of this, is that I've seen certain approaches to kiruv, and I'm talking about kiruv to like reaching out to like kids who are not religious, certain approaches where like the makarev like exhibits an extremely frum personality because they admire it and they think that will cause other people to admire it. But to the kid who's really like, resistant to that, it's going to be the opposite. Like, why would I want to make myself into something like that if I'm depriving myself? I'm not saying it doesn't work for some people, but like it can backfire in that sense. Yeah.
I just have a question, not on the idea, but more about like what's the what makes the Rasha think this way? I mean, why would he think he's
so
perfect? Just like that.
Right. So I think two immediate answers. One is on a like default psychological level, everyone, when faced with like their own inadequacies and like an ideal that they're presented with, it's easier for them to bash the ideal to justify and to make themselves feel better because the alternative is feeling inferior when they see the ideal. So I think that's like a basic thing. But also the Russia's value system is opposite from the tzaddiks. So let's say like the tzaddiks attached to learning and not spending lavishly, the Russia's gonna be like, why are you living in squalor and like wasting your time, you know?
So why is it specific to the Russia though? I mean, how's it defining Russia? Like,
Someone with imperfect mitos. And I think that
isn't that like a full also like the level?
he is defining it as someone with mitos chaseros. So again, I don't know his approach well enough to say. Yeah.
I think it's also defined more than meetups, like sort of like you were saying, like all general perfection.
Yeah, I think so also. Yeah, I don't know why he confines it to mitos. It is possible that he confines it to mitos because it was talking about Musar Av, you know.
So
I don't know if this is universal.
So what does that have to do with the tzaddik though? Like in terms of
But
like
tzaddik is someone with perfected mitos.
No.
Yeah.
I said what does this have to do with the tzaddik in the sense of like, okay, now that we understand the mindset of Russia, and it should be for us to like make sure we keep make this aware for ourselves. But like in terms of like the pasuk specifically, like to tie the.
So I'm saying that either the audience is someone who is trying to develop into a tzaddik, and they have to recognize this Russia tendency in themselves, which could screw up their perception, or it's talking to a tzaddik who's trying to guide others, and he has to put himself in their shoes and remember that they're going to look at his perfection as imperfection. Yeah. Okay, let's do Rabbeinu Yonah. I remember this morning, early this morning, seeing that this was good, but I don't remember what he said. Where does it start? I guess on the blue page. Yeah. I don't know why this one. I took all these in the same light, and like this one page came out blue. Don't know why. Beis tzaddik chosen rav. Beis tzaddik tokef atum. In the house of a tzaddik is great strength. Milashon lo ye'ater lo yechasein. Ki lo leolam chosem. All right. Vatam hona tzaddik ukvodo yiskayim leolam lo ulazara. So the meaning is that the tzaddik and his glory, his honor, will last forever for him and for his offspring. As it says, ulevanav yihye machseh. And for his kids, it would be a shelter. The kasuv ashrei banav acharav, and it says, "Happy are his children after him." Okay. Uvdivus Russia and Akaris v'shalvas harushaim lemispar shanim. The tranquility of the Russia is only for a limited number of years. Kamosh kasuv v'simchas chanef ade rega. That the joy of the flatterer or the hypocrite is only for a moment. Eloach yitzpon levanav ono. God will store away his strength for his children. Okay. All right, now here's where I guess the idea. Uvidvus Russia nekars Beis tzaddik. Oh, sorry, the Beis tzaddik will be corrupted when the Russia comes. Ki kasher yirsha. Yirsha? How do you when the ben tzaddik acts wickedly? Yirsha ben hatzadik the yinat musar aviv. So he connects it also. When the son of the tzaddik acts wickedly and rejects the musar of his father, b'meshi yarviach hu mitoch umichamas. It's got to be a phrase from Tehillim. Okay, so in profiting from, I don't know what toch here means, but something bad, and chamas, v'yosif al hon aviv, and he increases the wealth of his father. Ya'achor gam es otzar aviv. He will also corrupt the treasury of his father. Asher nikbatz v'netzar b'nikion kapayim uv'kishon namase, which was gathered honestly and properly. V'nichtav b'divrei zal al hon tzadik echad avad im hanosaf alav mehon tzadik acher shelo pizer mamono le'evyonim kvi aroy alav v'shalos habas hayureshes al sibas avadon haosher ahu v'tane osam davar baze v'ibet ezeh. Okay, maybe I'm not remembering Rabbeinu Yonah. This is a Gemara in Ksubos Samech Vav Beis Ladas Achas Sham. Let's just look at that really quickly. Samech Vav Amud Beis. Anyone familiar with the Gemara? Ksubos?
We're almost up to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Just started Subas.
Samech Vav Amud Beis. Almost. Roas Anolad. Okay. Daughter. Yeah. Okay. So Rabbi Huda said there was an incident involving the daughter of Nakdimon ben Guruni. He was really rich, right? Oh, that's probably what we're going to see. When the sages designated for her 400 gold coins for her account of perfumes, from her late husband's estate, for use on that same day. She blessed them and said to them, "This is how you should also pledge for your own daughters." And they answered, "Amen." Oh, maybe that was not the story. Okay, is this apropos or apropos, the proper noun or word? No, probably the word. Apropos the daughter of Nachman ben Gurion, the Gemara relates what later became of her. The sages taught there was an incident involving Rabbeinu Yonah ben Zakkai when he was riding on a donkey and leaving Jerusalem, and his students were walking after him to learn from him. He saw a certain young woman who was gathering barley from among the dung of the animals of the Arabs. She was so poor that she subsisted on undigested barley within the dung. When she saw him, she wrapped herself in her hair, as she had nothing else with which to cover herself, and stood before him. She said to him, "My teacher, sustain me." He did not recognize her. He said to her, "My daughter, who are you?" She said to him, "I am the daughter of Nachman ben Gurion." He said to her, "My daughter, the money of your father's household, where did it go? How did you become so poor?" She said to him, "My teacher, is it not that they say such a proverb in Jerusalem, salt for money is lacking?" Wait, that's not the way I would translate it. Mamun melach chaser. Okay, meaning if you want to salt money, you should diminish it. That's the chaser, meaning that the way to preserve wealth is to give to tzedakah. That's a proverb. There's nothing with which to preserve it and prevent it from being. Oh, okay. This is a different understanding of it. The way that I've seen the Rishonim talk about it is, in order to make wealth last, you should diminish it. But this seems to be saying there's no way to preserve money. Like, I don't know what's right for this. There's nothing with which to preserve it and prevent it from being lost. And some say the proverb asserts that kindness is salt for money. Using money for acts of kindness preserves. Okay, that's how I understood it. And he continued to ask her, "And the money of your father-in-law's house, which was used properly for benevolent acts, where is it?" She said to him, "This one came and destroyed that one. All the money was combined and it was lost altogether." She said to him, "My teacher, do you remember when you signed on my marriage contract?" He said to his students, "I remember that I signed on the marriage contract of this woman, and I read it. It listed 1,000 thousands, i.e. 1 million gold dinars, as dowry from her father's house, aside from that which was promised from her father-in-law." Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai cried and said, "How fortunate are you, Israel, for when Israel performs the will of the omnipresent, the Hamakom, no nation or tongue can rule over them. And when Israel does not perform the will of Hamakom, he delivers them into the hands of a lowly nation. Not only are they delivered into the hand of a lowly nation, but even into the hand of the animals of a lowly nation." Okay, fine. So basically the point is that she had her father who was righteous and accumulated a lot of money, and she squandered it, presumably on stuff like this perfume, and it did not last. And she concluded from there, I guess, that there's no way to preserve money. Kind of like Isaac's thing that he was quoting of like, $800,000 bonus is just not enough. Did we finish the Rabbeinu Yonah? No. Rabbeinu Yonah then goes on and we did. No, we did not. Tavuas is revach v'tosefes. Oh, so it means like profit or revenue. V'chein tavuas Rasha l'chatas, v'chein ba derech mashal utavuasi mikasef nivchar, uboshu mitavuasechem, okay, fine, une'akars, nimsa ba'izeh, lashon nekeva, okay, fine. Yeah, so what's his idea here? Feels like one of the ones we've said. This is Bayis, I think, in terms of the legacy, right? That the base tzaddik is chosen rav, which Rabbeinu Yonah said means, what was his positive explanation for chosen rav? That it is, where is Rabbeinu Yonah? It's going to last, right? Unless one of his children is a Rasha, in the sense of, Rasha, he doesn't say this, but Rasha does not always mean evil person. Rasha in Tehillim is sometimes used as someone who chases after money. Like in Tehillim Aleph, there are a bunch of meforshim who say that. So it sounds, he does say Yersha ben Hatzadik, Yinat Musar Aviv. He is learning as Rasha, right? And he gathers it through Hamas. Yeah, what's the unified idea here? And what's the practical advice? The practical advice seems to be that the tzaddik should make sure that his wealth lasts, but if he has a kid who's going to reject his musar, then all the wealth could be gone. You see, this was the big mistake with the, what are they called? The, what was the, where's Ariel? Was it Vanderbilt or was it, which of the tycoons? I know several of them, but like a lot of them had they did not teach their kids to spend wisely, and the kids didn't work, and they just squandered all the wealth, and like all of the wealth was gone by like the third generation. Yeah, I'm not sure, but that's an example of this. Yeah. Yeah, David.
I think there's like one practical note is insofar as you think that you're a tzaddik and you have yourself figured how to build a strong
Yeah.
house, then this seems to me that this is saying like coming from within the house. I feel like we've been talking about coming from outside the
Right.
house. The destruction comes. This is saying like even within your house, that this destruction can come forth.
Yeah. Yeah. So what causes people to be blind to that? I mean, it doesn't have to be one factor. I mean, I think there's going to naturally be, if this is from your offspring, I think there is a natural mistake that parents can make where they assume they overly identify with their kids and they assume that their kids take on more of their values than they actually do, and then that might lead them to downplay any deficiencies in midos. Like they'll say like, oh yeah, he's my 20-year-old son is partying with money right now, but he'll come around, he'll get it out of his system, and then he'll take after his old man, and like be responsible. Like no, it's if he's rejecting your mussar, then chances are that's not going to happen. Another mistake might be that this is a similar version of the mistake, but you have your own immortality fantasy. And when you think you're thinking about your son, you're actually just imagining yourself lasting, but you're doing it through like intellectually, that it's lasting through him, but you think that it's you imagine yourself going forward. Another thing I think is just the mistake of people. Again, this relates to like my interpretation, but people feel that if something takes a long time to build and is strong, then it means that strength has to last. And like that's you could destroy an empire like like that. So it might be a mistake about the wealth itself. Yeah. Let's just really quickly look at the Meiri's derech nistar. Even though Ariel's not here anymore. Derech nistar in the Meiri. We'll read his regular thing also. Bayis Sadeh chos and Rabbeinu Tuas Rasha ne'akaras. Bayis chaser Bayis. Klomar Bayis Sadeh. That was not a pun, but it reads like a pun. So it's in the house. Chosin lashon otzar. So it means treasury. Okay, blah blah blah. This is promising reward and punishment. I don't know if this is mishpato with the capital vav, meaning God's mishpat. V'amar beveis tzadik yimsa osher rav shel tvua v'ha'havech barasha. Ratzlamer she'ein lo otzar, meaning that he does not have an otzar. V'lo od ela sha'ap b'ma'at tvua, so yimsa ba tvua ne'akar v'nir keves. So not only does he not have an otzar, but whatever produce you find is going to be rotten. Okay, so I don't know what he's saying there. Let's see if we can get the derech nistar though. The derech nistar yesh lamer chosin lashon tokef lashon chosin can mean power. Mi lashon hachason lenaores v'hakavana lios yiras adam kodemas lachachma. So it's saying that a person's yiras chet should be before his chachma. V'amar, which generally means your midos should come before your intellectual perfection. V'amar beveis tzadi chosin rav ratzolmer emuna chazaka v'kayamis. So chosin rav means strong emuna. V'hu mitzad sheyiraso kodemas lachachma. Oh, this is a good idea. Okay, so classic mistake. So what is emuna?
Conviction.
Yeah, conviction, right? So conviction is a combination of emotion and intellect, meaning you have knowledge, but then your emotions attach to that knowledge as being real, right? So the thing is that people make the mistake of thinking that you can just work on your clarity of your knowledge, and then that will lead to a stable emuna. But you have to work on perfection of midos as well. Like, let's say, for example, you go through all the rayas of like Torah Sinai and God's existence and all this other stuff. But let's say you are drawn to hedonism. Okay, so what's going to happen is the desire for a lifestyle of hedonism can erode your conviction in the intellectual proofs that you've mustered. So you're not going to your emuna is not going to be chazaka and kayemes if you haven't perfected your midos as the base. And base, I mean like in English and in Hebrew. Yeah, right.
You say you just like you only believe as much as you want to?
I'm saying that in order for your beliefs to be stable, then your emotions have to be on board. And so unless you are working on your emotions in concert with your knowledge, then there's going to be this like cognitive dissonance, and that could cause your emuna to actually weaken.
But the reason why working on your midos would help your emotions is because
Your emuna or your emotions? Because I'm saying your emuna. I'm saying working on your midas and working on your emotions is the same
But
thing.
you said right. You said emuna is two parts. It's
Yeah.
truth and emotions.
Yeah.
And the reason why working on your midos would help your emuna, to me, it seemed what you're saying was, because if you work on your midos, right? Let's say you were a hedonist and now you're not a hedonist.
Yeah.
Then it's just more of an appealing belief to believe that you're doing a good thing or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an example. I mean, this is just one example. Another example is, in Tehillim, a lot of the prokim we learn are about bitachon. And so you can know that God is, you can know Yisod Chachmos, but is your emotional security in God, or is your emotional security in your parents, or like the government, or your kochi botim, like there's a midos that has to have to be in place before. Let's see what he says for the second half. Even in the root of emuna, you'll find corruption and confusion. Okay, that's a different interpretation. Yeah. All right, sorry, Ian, I don't want to hold you more, but okay. This is an interesting prospect. A lot of in terms of the way to relate to your system if you're a tzaddik, I just want to flag that and say that it is interesting. I think I noticed this when we were going through the questions. You don't usually see Mishlei pointing out mistakes specifically for the tzaddik. So this is just an interesting thing. Okay, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.